Hello and welcome to the agenda on Labour Social. Just make sure that the sound is okay. Can you hear me, Phil? Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Excellent. I hope everyone can hear Phil in the chat there. And we've got quite a few people on the chat. We've got Flint Reed, we've got Master Templar, we've got Johnny Copperhead, we've got Danilo, Petra, we've got One Angry Pagan, we've got Peter, we've got Sarah Kent, we've got loads of people in the chat. This is fantastic. Already, and we haven't even started. So, Phil, has anything been happening this week?
There's been quite a lot of things happening. The Telegraph's going to be sold, maybe to
Oh
someone who'll turn
yes,
it into a newspaper again.
or
Um,
perhaps someone even worse. Maybe Elon Musk might want to buy it.
no, Bezos was after it a few years ago,
Really?
apparently.
Oh God!
Yeah,
But then he
so
decides to go into space instead.
it may be. I mean, it'll not. I keep saying it's the same thing when people say, "Oh, you should defund the BBC." It's not going to be bought by a billionaire socialist philanthropist. It'll be bought by someone who wants to push their own agenda. It'll be bought by someone who's right wing. But it, but but the Telegraph was always right wing anyway,
Yeah,
and but it turned into the cesspit it is now under the Barclay brothers. Well, there's now only one left.
the Barclay brother.
So
The Barclay
yeah.
brother. They call it the Barclay family now because the son of one of them is now the co-owner or something. But
Well,
yeah,
not anymore
don't they owe the bank
because the
like some?
bankers said,
Isn't it
yeah,
something
the banks
ridiculous?
said we're having it because you owe us a load of money. And the Telegraph is not even it's profitable. The Telegraph itself is profitable.
Yeah,
So absolutely people will be up for buying it.
but I
So
mean,
it's a case of who it is. But it may be that whoever is after it, and they will inevitably be after it to use to influence the public. That's what all newspaper owners want to do.
yeah.
But they are not necessarily going to be wanting to forcibly throw people down rabbit holes, is the way I would describe it. So we may end up with a better Telegraph out of it. Maybe it becomes more like the Times again rather than the Daily Mail.
I was saying on my show the other day that felt like the Telegraph had really gone down in the last few years. Like it got a lot worse than it was. But a lot
Mm.
of people, I was getting quite a lot of people in the chat actually saying, no, we think it's always been that bad. Maybe I just didn't
I,
notice.
I don't think it's always been. I think it got worse under the Barclays, but that was like 20 years ago. Um, it no, it was. It's always seemed to me that it was more like you sort of thought about the broadsheets and the tabloids. The tabloids were the ones with the really ridiculous takes on things,
Mm.
and the broadsheets were more serious, and they'd
Yes.
present things. And there were bias was still there. The bias was always there. And yes, they want you to vote conservative and they want to push you to certain things, but they weren't utterly ridiculous. Um, but we will see. We will see what happens. I saw there was a suggestion in the Guardian that a Saudi prince may want to buy it or something like that, because Saudi Arabia is actively trying to buy up influence in Britain. They've
Yes.
bought my football club. It's not my football club, but what I support, which I have mixed feelings about. But
Yeah,
there we
I'm
go.
I'm not
So they
too
may do
happy
that.
about foreign oligarchs. But then the COP28 summit's going to be held in the United Arab Emirates, which I've put is a bit like letting the lions in charge of the baby gazelles. It's like, what? How are
Yeah.
they? And at the last COP summit, there were more
Well,
people, delegates from oil companies than there were actual
yeah.
politicians. Can I just say before you jump in there, Flint Reed, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. Some cash to buy the Tory graph.
Um,
£2.
you, I don't. I think it's worth a good few hundred million. You may need a bit more.
But it's never going to make a profit, is it? It's a
It does make
loss,
a profit.
does it?
It won't. It won't make back your investment because it doesn't make that much of a profit. It makes like what, about 30 million or something. But again, the people who want it to influence. They're wanting it for that influence. They'll spend a bit of money. So when they say it's profitable, what it means is, let's say you buy it for whatever you end up buying it for, 200-300 million pounds. I don't know what it's valued at.
Chicken feed.
So, well, for a Russian Russian
Yeah.
oil shake, Saudi Arabia, hardly any difference. Saudi Arabian oil shake, it is chicken feed. But you don't want to keep hemorrhaging money after it, do you? So you buy a profitable outlet, or at least it's profitable for now. and you pay your stake, and then that's it. You've paid it. That's your investment then. So no, no one's going to buy it as a business venture. They're going to buy it that's what I mean.
Yeah.
No one is going to buy it because it's a good business opportunity. They're going to buy it because it's a way at relatively low cost, because once you've sunk your money into it, there's nothing more to pay out while it remains profitable.
Yeah.
They just want to buy it to influence public opinion.
There's another £2 super chat there from Flint saying, "Let's do a GoFundMe." GoFundMe for £200 million.
Yeah, if I had £200 million burn a hole in my pocket, it would not be used to buy the Telegraph.
Well, I mean,
apart from anything else, I would make it instantly unprofitable, because what I would insist the editors publish, or in the way they would publish, would overnight turn off their readership. So
yes.
I mean, that's the other thing. You know, they're not gonna suddenly put a completely different spin on things. They may just, allow the editors to behave with some journalistic integrity.
What? Integrity? Journalists in England? Come on.
Well, on more, as I say, more of a par with the Times than the Mail or the Express.
Yeah, we got are these, you said it was profitable. I mean, no one under the age of 50 reads newspapers now. I mean, like, it's a dying industry. Sure,
it's online. It's online, and that's how they have to push it. But it does make money. It does actually make money. And the other thing is, and I brought this up. Yeah, I did a poll. Well, I didn't do a poll. I discussed a poll a couple of weeks ago where they were finding out with Labour and Conservative voters which news media they trusted more.
Yeah.
And even Conservative voters, it was a very negative score for the likes of the Sun, the Mail, the Express. So even Tory voters don't trust those papers. It's only a very narrow section that do, but they do trust the Telegraph.
Yeah.
So the Telegraph, in fact, the Telegraph was the most trusted newspaper for Conservative voters, I think I'm right in saying. Right. So this is actually quite big news that it might, soften certain things or change the way it reports. Could actually be quite important.
Indeed. I'm just trying to bring up your the thing that you've sent me of Donald Trump's his message.
His word salad, I think, is the polite way of
salad.
describing it.
I'm just going to bring it up on the screen so everyone can see it, and then I'll read it out. Here it is. Here's his words. It's Donald Trump's word salad that he put it in capitals, of course. When Mark Meadows came crawling to me with tears in his, I feel like I should be shouting this. When Mark Meadows came crawling to me with tears in his eyes, saying, "Sir, I need a job. Please help me." I felt sorry for him. I knew two spaces. I knew he was strongly hated by most of his fellow congressional Republicans, but I had just fired my previous chief of staff like a dog. Okay, do you fire your dog? What? Hey, dog, you're fired.
Took him out back and shot him in the head. I don't know.
So I decided to have a Mark audition for the job, apprentice style. How did he thank me? By hiring viscous rhinos. What? And rats who turned and threw me under the... Oh, he spelled through wrong, and he spelled vicious wrong. He spelled viscous under the bus at the radical communists of the J8 committee, and then a mad dog leftist prosecutor. I was going to fire Mark in 2021, but the election was stolen from me. Stolen, isn't that a kind of bread? Don't you buy stolen in Germany?
Yeah, it's like spiced cake, isn't it?
Is it? It was stolen from me. This is what they should do now. Whenever you see Trump outside, just get some stolen and like throw it at him. It's been stolen. Oh, he's demented. I mean, that's just not that. It's just the ravings of a madman, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, exactly what it is. He is like a more extreme version of Boris Johnson. Like Boris Johnson has got a little bit more self-awareness.
Only a little.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Boris Johnson can tweet. At least Trump knows how to tweet.
I strongly suspect Boris Johnson, because obviously he does have a Twitter and occasionally he puts some self-promotion material on it. I strongly suspect he doesn't do it. He has someone to do it for him, which Trump should probably do. Trump probably shouldn't ever speak for himself.
He shouldn't be allowed. Because it wasn't a thing when he was president, like you could see whether it was a tweet sent by his staff because they used an Android phone, I
English.
think. And it came up, yeah, it was in English. But it comes up like sent from Android or sent
Right.
via
Yeah.
iPhone. And it was
Yeah.
like, if it was iPhone, it was him. And if it was,
Right.
it was, so you could always tell which ones were
Yeah.
actually just him sitting on the bog
I think you
at
could
3 in
probably
the
tell
morning,
anyway.
raging on Twitter. But yeah, he's gonna be brought up in court on Tuesday, is it?
I haven't. I know he's been indicted, and they're working out at the moment how to get him to court
Mm.
because obviously they've got a past president's got to security's got to be involved.
It's gonna be an interesting couple of months or couple of
See
years,
what
maybe.
I found, and it said the indictments don't impact his run for the election, which I thought, okay, fine. But then it said even if he were convicted, that wouldn't affect it. So, given that he'd be convicted of co-opting top secret documents, how can that not bar you from office, any office, let alone the highest office in the land? I
Yeah.
don't get that.
Well, no, the only rules they've got is that you've got to be born on American soil, you've got to be 35, and you've got to have spent 14 years in America. That's
Yeah.
it. So the mad thing is that I think that someone like Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz can't run as president because he was born in Canada. Is that right?
Right. Something like
But
that.
Boris Johnson, if he did move back to, if he did
Well, and
move
stayed there
back,
for 14 years.
yeah. But if he did move
He
back,
did
then
renounce his citizenship there, so I suppose he'd have to get that back.
he would. Yes. But no, he could. If he'd have to stay there for 14 years.
Yeah.
But Boris Johnson could run for president of the United States
Right.
because he's born in New
Yeah,
York.
welcome to him.
Have him, take him off us. But yeah, fate worse than Trump. But no, it is going to be. That's a curse, isn't it? In the old Chinese curse of may you live in interesting times, and we certainly do.
Boris Johnson wouldn't be anywhere near as malevolent as John. I think it's Trump. I think he'd just enjoy feeling important. I think that's all Johnson wants. He just wants to party and feel important. So he'd be relatively benign as American president. I mean, it'd screw their country up, but then
He wouldn't go after people in the same way that Trump went after
no,
Mexicans and
no.
Muslims and
no.
yeah.
They would only do whatever was necessary to keep him in power. And given that all they really care about is making rich people even richer, he'd be quite happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, we were talking a little bit before we came on about the fact that Boris Johnson's list of people he wants to put in the House of Lords. You did a
Yes.
video on this yesterday, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it looks like Rishi Sunak's torpedoed it.
I had said I've had to apologise to Rishi Sunak because I haven't apologised to Rishi Sunak because he doesn't take my calls. But I said yesterday, yes, I can understand because people were saying he should have blocked the whole honours list. He can't. I mean, on what basis do you block the whole honours list? You can't really. You can't just say, well, Boris Johnson's unsuitable to have them because people will say that about any prime minister, depending on what their political leanings are. So he has to be able to have one. What's actually mad is that with Liz Truss, maybe he should say you're allowed one. You were in office for like a few weeks. I'll give you one honour. Give it to whoever you like. But anyway, with Boris Johnson, what Rishi Sunak certainly should have done, he should not be allowing these damaging by-elections. He should have at least cock-blocked Nadine Dorries and Alex Sharma, and it turns out he has done, as well as a bonus, stopped Boris Johnson giving his dad a knighthood. So I thought, fair play, Sunak there. That is not just the right thing to do. I'm not talking about morality. Morality is neither here nor there. But just strategically, the Stanley Johnson knighthood would reflect poorly on the Conservative Party. That's not helping him win the election. The by-elections would be incredibly damaging for Rishi Sunak. He'd be mad to allow them.
Yeah.
It turns out he hasn't done. So, yes, okay, a strategic decision there. But and he feels that he has the authority to make those decisions. So, fine.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking forward to those by-elections though, because it would have been wonderfully
Absolutely.
damaging to Rishi.
The Alex Sharma one would have been won easily by Labour. It's a case of the other one. I was interested in Mid-Bedfordshire because I'm not really sure whether it would be Labour or the Liberal Democrats that should go for it. It's one of those where, there's certain things suggesting Labour, but but is it one of those where Labour can only get so many votes and the Lib Dems are better placed to get the rest? So I was curious, in all honesty. I was actually curious about that one, because Labour will never target it for the general election. They would, if it was possible, they'd target it for a local election, by-election, sorry, but never a general election. There's too many others they have to target that are much easier to win.
Well then, but yeah, so there's going to be no by-elections now. Is that it? Is that it's definitely?
Oh well, yes. There's for the Tories, there might be Boris Johnson's by-election.
Oh yes, because
I don't think he will stand in it. But Uxbridge and Southerners always moan about this. But Uxbridge and Ruislip, or I don't know how you pronounce it.
Ruislip, I think.
Ruislip. Why do they have to pronounce things wrong?
I don't know.
But anyway, there will be a by-election there, assuming that the suspension is for at least 10 days, and we will find out by the end of this month, because Boris Johnson has been given the findings. He's been given 2 weeks to moan at them. And then presumably the committee needs another week to consider his response, which is probably going to be written 500 times. It's not fair. But I've said in the video that's going to be coming out on my channel at 12. So no one, it would be a contempt, as far as I understand it, to leak any of the findings. So no one can say anything. But if I were a journalist, I would go up to Boris Johnson. I would poke him. I would press a few buttons and see what his reaction is. Because if he likes what he sees in this thing, he'll be quite affable, won't he?
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, then he'll be quite irritable. So I would press a few buttons and gauge his reaction to see what's in it.
So this report that's coming out to decide whether he broke ministerial rules, it was supposed to come out like at Easter, wasn't it? But then it got delayed for one reason, and now it's got delayed again. Is this because of the Chequers revelations that he actually had more parties?
Yeah, because ultimately, what the investigation is not about the parties; it's about whether he lied, whether he deliberately misled Parliament. And given that he'd said there were no parties, I think it'd be more about the Downing Street ones than the Chequers ones. I think more about like in his flat. But nonetheless, that presumably is considered a material aspect of whether or not he lied. So yeah, they had to consider that. They've given him, but they've now made their finding. It's all written down. He's got 2 weeks to respond. Then they'll have to consider his response and decide if they change anything. Right. And we're told by the end of the month. So that's, about 3 weeks. So yeah, it's, so there presumably will be that by-election, but I don't imagine Boris Johnson will stand in it. But nonetheless, that will be a Tory seat going to Labour.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the Margaret Ferrier's old seat, but that is purely between the SNP and Labour. And Labour are expected to win that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, this is just I'm going to say the start of it, but really the Tories from, what is it, January 2020 have been sort of going down in the polls, haven't they? And they had the little bit of a blip where they managed to get the vaccine.
There was the vaccine bounce, yeah.
And they got a bounce from that. But other than that, it's just been down and down and down. I mean, obviously not going to get as low as when Liz Truss was in
Liz Truss, no.
for 6 weeks, because that was just an absolute car crash. But the fact that they allow Liz Truss to do anything, why is she going out and giving talks at the Heritage Foundation? Why is she going to Taiwan?
Well, again, she shouldn't be. Rishi Sunak should have elbowed that. I mean, she doesn't have the following anywhere that Boris Johnson does. She borrowed Boris Johnson's support from the party base, the membership. Yeah. So he easily could put her in her box, and just say, no, you're not causing an incident. I mean, the good thing is she didn't cause an international incident, like I suggested, because people know she's basically as mad as a box of frogs. So
that was the calculation by Rishi Sunak. He's like, well, everyone ignore her anyway.
I think it must have been because, but I said at the time, this is the third time now she's tried to make a comeback and it keeps falling flat, and she's just going to keep shouting louder and louder. And I joked that the next time she may pop up in the West Bank to do a speech on on Zionism or something.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking some also saying she didn't make much impact in Taiwan. No, because, again, people, even the media here, basically, they commented on the fact she went there to talk shit. But it hasn't done what she wanted it to do, which is to raise her profile again.
Yeah.
You know, her crew are trying to say, oh, she's been proved right, because they're trying to point out that, which is right, that gilt yields are getting close to where they were with Liz Truss. And it's like, well, how come it was a problem for her, but it's not a problem for Rishi Sunak? Oh, it proves that she was right. It's like, no, it proves that Rishi Sunak's just as shit. But the but that's what they're trying to say, but no one's paying any attention to them.
No, no. Well, I'm looking at the BBC homepage here, and the number one story, and I don't know if it's because of my location or whatever, it's not about Trump being indicted. It's not about the Ukraine dam breach. It's not about the knife attack in France. It is about Labour watering down their 28 billion pound green investment pledge. And I spoke about this a little bit in Morning Brew this morning. I said, well, they've got to look at the economy the way it is now and go, can we afford this? They can't just give out pledges and say, we're definitely going to do this when we don't have the money to do it because the Tories have already spent all the money on, their crooked mates. But if you read down into it, it says we will get up to 28 billion by 2027. Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like a bit of a non-story, but I can't believe that it's the number one leading story on the BBC site.
My own personal view is it's disappointing because it was one of the pledges that I was quite excited about.
Yeah, and same here.
And the fact that we can totally afford it. But what I will say is the reason why they've said this is because ultimately one of the things that costs Labour elections is this notion. It's the Conservatives' best lie. It's their most successful lie ever, that Labour will be reckless with the economy. Even the Tories right now, with the economy in the state it's in right now, without a hint of irony, will say that Labour will wreck the economy. And it's ridiculous that people should ever consider, but they do. So what they're making sure is that their spending plans are costed to the nth degree, that no one can find a fag paper in between like their spending plans and reasonable tax revenues. So that's what they're doing. It is disappointing. I am actually very disappointed with the news, but ultimately that's what they're doing. And I've seen on Twitter, they're like spiked online and all the usual crowd all going, oh, U-turn, massive U-turn. I'm thinking, you're just promoting the fact that Labour are being very careful with the country's finances, which is so in a way, although I'm disappointed with this U-turn, I am it's going to work strategically for Labour because all the right-wing paper are hailing, oh, a U-turn will hail this. It's like, yeah, but what you're promoting is the fact that Labour are being strict with the nation's finances.
Yeah.
And all these people have all been trying to argue that this funding is bad anyway and a waste of money. So now you're promoting the fact that Labour are not going to get the country into hock for it.
Yeah.
So strategically, this is going to work in Labour's favour, and they're too stupid to see it.
The quote is, no plan can be built that is not on a rock of economic and fiscal responsibility. Yeah. I will never play fast and loose with the public finances. That's what Rachel Reeves has said today. But also, she said that we could not have predicted the market crash caused by former Prime Minister Liz Truss's plans for unfunded borrowing and for tax cuts last autumn, which created the difficult economic backdrop. So there's quite a few, in just a few lines there, there's a lot of digs at the Tories. It's like, we would like to do this, but the Tories have absolutely effed it all up. And where can we go from here? Well, we can't do the exact plan that we wanted to because we don't have the money, and because you need is it Greg Hands who goes around with the little bit of paper that says there's no money? There's no money now.
Well, like, people have been producing another version of that's quite funny, and they keep tweeting to Greg Hands where it's another version, but it says it's from Greg Hands saying, "Sorry, old cock, there's no country left."
Yeah. Anyway, how come you support Newcastle? Just out of interest.
Because when I was growing, I'm from Doncaster, but when I was growing up, like, my dad's not a football fan, None of my sort of family from Doncaster were football fans. Now, my mum's family are from all over the place.
Yeah.
And the Newcastle wing of her family were the football fans. So I just sort of grew up and I grew up in the era of Liverpool and Everton dominating football,
Yes.
but nonetheless,
Great days.
because the only family I had that were football fans were from Newcastle, I just grew up as a Newcastle fan.
Oh, well, that's fair enough.
Which sort of paid off for a few years.
Yeah, for a few years.
With you know, with the Donny lad in charge, Kevin Keegan. Unfortunately, it was all bittersweet, but nonetheless, it was.
They won the Premiership, didn't they, in the 90s?
No,
didn't they?
No.
Or am I thinking of someone else?
Should have done twice.
All right.
But unfortunately, Alex Ferguson got into Kevin Keegan's head, didn't he?
All right.
Same with FA Cups. I remember, an FA Cup final against Arsenal. It's like, no, not to be. But, it was nice to at least be competing when we didn't have to be owned by like a murderer, but never mind.
Owned by a murderer. Anyway, yeah, but Everton got bought by some bloke from Iran, didn't it? So, yeah, I can't really talk. Anyway, Maggie Pie has just dropped in 20 Swedish krona. Is a UK-US lithium deal a post-Brexit benefit?
It can't be a post-Brexit benefit because we could have done that in the EU.
Potential
Brexit benefit. No.
Any
deal we get with America is on America's terms, apart from anything else, and we could have done that with the EU. Remember, the EU have got agreements relating to the Inflation Reduction Act with America as well. It's something that we should be going for ourselves. So, no, for it to be a potential Brexit benefit, it has to be something that is both beneficial and something that couldn't have happened when we were in the EU.
Yes.
And neither applies in this case.
So, am I right in thinking that the infrastructure deal, the green infrastructure deal that Biden got through last year in America, that was incredibly protectionist on green
hugely illegal
industries? Yeah, it goes against everything that the WTO stands for. And the part, what was it? We've got a partnership, don't we? Where any country of the group, it's an IMF thing and not an IMF thing, WTO thing, and whoever's part of the group can bid for contracts in other people's countries if they're part of this group, and America is, and we are, but we're not going to be able to bid for these green contracts. But
what the EU have basically done is they've effectively gone to Biden and said, look, we don't need to cause each other any trouble. The reason why no one's going to make an issue of this at the WTO level, apart from the fact that there's no point, is because ultimately you'd be attacking America's attempts to really kickstart the green revolution, which is in everyone's interest, right?
Yeah.
It's just we don't want them making all the money from it. So what the EU have basically done, as far as I can tell, is gone to Biden and said, look, we don't need to cause each other trouble here, do we? So, we should be involved in there. And so they've got an agreement in principle from Biden, although it's still, I don't know that it's a formal agreement because obviously Congress would have to okay, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
But they've got an agreement from Biden that anything produced in the EU would count as produced in the US. So to sort of smooth it over there, that's really what we need to be trying to do. We need to get in on that.
Yeah. But the EU is pretty canny when it wants to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
The idea that this EU is this like monolithic beast that, it takes ages to do trade deals and all this kind of stuff. The amount of time it normally takes to do a free trade deal, that's standard. And obviously, if you are dotting every I and crossing every T and making sure that every single thing is in place to protect your citizens, the people that you're representing, and your consumers, it does take a long time. And the fact that these trade deals that we've got with New Zealand and Australia and Japan and the continuation deals that we've got with Canada and stuff, they were just rushed through. And they're happy for it to be rushed through. But like us bragging about the fact that we've rushed this through, it seems insane to me. Like something so important that should take a long time to negotiate and go through every single detail, every single clause. We're just gone, no, we're happy with anything. And the reason I think that we've done this, I don't think it's got anything to do with trade whatsoever. I've just done a Moment of Truth video about this, which will be published as soon as this finishes. I think they've done it just so they're trying to tie the hands of future governments that if we try and get out of these deals, there will be a financial penalty.
I think more of it was just they wanted the good headlines, but inevitably some of them do tie the hands of future governments, unless, of course, we rejoin the EU, because it could be argued by tying the hands of a future government, you just make the path of least resistance rejoining the EU.
Yes.
Fine. Fine.
Absolutely. Well, also a point I made is that if these deals end up costing us money, and we've spoken about this, haven't we? The idea that it's going to be what 0.08% over 20 years or whatever it is. It might
Yeah.
actually be less than that. It might actually
Yeah.
impact us in a way that costs us money. And the
Yeah.
example I gave is if we're flooded with cheap beef from Argentina, from Australia, and then that puts our beef farmers out of business, and then they hike the prices up of that imported beef,
Yeah.
that's going to be just well, not. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not going to destroy our economy, but it's going to be pretty disastrous as far as our food security is concerned.
Well, even without that happening, I mean, at the end of the day, the beef you're talking about come from, say, Australia and Argentina. Like, we can get good quality beef from them if we wanted right now. There's not an issue, or even before.
Yeah.
We're talking about the low quality stuff, the hormone injected, intensely farmed crap that no bugger would really want unless they were on a budget. So there's going to be people who will still want the good quality beef. And if you can't, apart from a few specialist places that might sell on Fortnum and Mason, if you can't get it in this country, you'll have to import it. So that will increase the costs anyway, because the major problem we have with imports, apart from the fact you're paying someone else's citizen, so you're contributing taxes to another country, is the fact that because the pound has weakened since Brexit, imports are effectively more expensive. So the more you have to import, the higher the cost to the country, effectively.
And also, that's money going out
trade.
the country, isn't it? It's not money circulating around our own economy.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
It's literally pounds leaving the country, wealth leaving our country for commodities that we can make ourselves. And that to me is just the dictionary definition of madness.
Yeah.
And yet here we are. I'm seeing on the feed coming up in the Guardian that the Prime Minister's been urged to block Boris Johnson's honours list. Apparently, it's going to be published today, and it's going to include 50 names.
Oh, about that, yeah. Well, we know 3 of them have been nobbled. 50 is about normal, I think. I gather 50 is about normal.
Is Truss going to be able to do this?
Yeah. See, there's more justification for not letting her do it. I would say as I said earlier on, Rishi Sunak should just have a little quiet word with Liz Truss and say, look, I'll give you one. You can have one knighthood.
Oh, that a knighthood. Oh, thank God for that.
I would give her so she can have one. She can nominate one person for a knighthood or damehood.
I'll give you one.
Choose one. Anything more than that is a piss take, quite frankly.
It really is. But the fact that he hasn't put her in a box just kind of freaks me out. Like, how weak is he that he can't shut her up?
Exactly, because she's much easier to deal with than Boris Johnson.
Yeah, and she's positively toxic for the Tory party. Yeah, like, everyone agrees, even diehard Tories, that she was an absolute disaster. Well, except for the IEA, who Lord, and the Mail that said at last a true Tory budget. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank God for that Tory budget, eh? Otherwise, look, the state of our economy, it would have been awful.
But anyway, it's I mean, this thing about being urged, I've just read it myself. It's been urged by Stephen Kinnock. It's been urged by Labour. It's not like, their own party doing it. I mean, that's just party politics. There's no objective reason for Rishi Sunak to block the whole honours list. Yeah. There's been reason to block a few things that are going to cause him trouble, and he has done. So at the end of the day, I can't beyond party politic, and I can't really criticise Sunak for this, but he probably should stop Liz Truss taking the piss.
Yeah,
because otherwise they're going to have to expand the House of Lords to allow for an IEA wing. They are all going to be in.
But there's already
In fact, Phil's saying there, Truss is proposing Mark Littlewood of the IAA for a peerage. Yeah, I'll bet there's a few others as well. I mean, it is just as well Starmer's going to abolish the whole house, because I
yes,
used to be very much in favour of the idea, because all it does is scrutinise legislation. It doesn't block it. It just scrutinises it. That having former parliamentarians and business leaders and people and senior judges and people like that in it was fine, but it's just become so toxic now.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
and it's irredeemable. You cannot reform it in its current state. So I'm just going to say, yeah, get rid of it at
So
this point.
there's around 780 members at the moment of the House of Lords. So if he gets all
Yeah.
his 50, does that
Oh,
mean
they're
that
not all. No, they're not all peerages. They're just
okay?
50 honours.
So
There's
some people just
oh
get a
yeah.
gong,
So a lot of them will just be like knighthoods.
right?
Most of
Okay,
them will be like knighthoods and things like that.
yeah,
I don't know how many actual peerages there are. I think it might have been about 10 or something. But given that Boris Johnson has already been packing it out, there was a time when there were fewer lords than there were MPs. Now it's way more.
yeah, way more.
So it's and Boris Johnson actually came. He became prime minister saying that the House of Lords should be slimmed down. It's
He ca- he
slimmed
ca-
down about as well as he has.
he became prime minister saying a lot of things.
Yeah,
He'd rather be dead in a ditch, didn't he, rather than
yeah,
not go for a no deal
yeah,
Brexit in October 2020.
yeah.
2019.
I mean, he did comply with the Ben Act in like the most childish way possible. He basically photocopied his arse and sent it to the EU, um, but nonetheless, yeah, he still went through with it because he doesn't fancy going to prison.
No, no, and it's one of those things where he has consistently lied and cheated and conned people, and
Yeah.
it's like Trump. Do people enjoy being lied to? Is that the question we need to be asking here? Are the people who honestly they love it when
Be-
isn't that a
they
Rihanna
don't.
song?
They just think that they believe the conspiracies about the in this country we call it the Whitehall blob. In America they call it the deep state. You
Yeah,
know, they just believe this thing that even when you give them the power that they say they will be able to change everything with, they have that power. When they don't deliver, oh, it's because of the deep state or the blob or whatever, and it's all just
yeah, it's
fucking
mad, isn't
behave
it?
yourself.
Um,
No peerage for Dominic Cummings. No, I don't think Boris Johnson likes Dominic Cummings now.
Nick in Diff says, compare the Senate in America to the House of Lords in numbers. It's obscene. They only have 100 senators. That's
Yeah.
for 330 million people, and we're creeping up to 1,000 members of the House of Lords
I,
for 66
I
million.
don't necessarily think America is the model, and also bear in
No,
mind that
but
there's a proper federal system in America where you've got state legislatures as well. We
yeah,
don't have that.
yeah.
We have like 3 state legislatures effectively.
And one of them never
So
meets.
yes,
The DUP.
yes.
Right.
Well, that's at the moment. The DUP knackered at the moment, but last time it was Sinn Féin, and then the time before that, I don't know. I don't remember. It spent about half its time empty.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I'm just reading at the moment about Jeremy Hunt. Get that name right.
yeah, I know this. I've seen this
He's
one.
offered the North Sea oil and gas industry a get-out clause on the windfall taxes that they were supposed to be paying.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about something else.
No, he's
There's
got a get-out clause. He hopes to boost investment
yeah,
in the North Sea by agreeing to suspend the windfall tax on oil profits if the market price for Brent crude falls below $71.40 a barrel, and gas prices fall below 54 pence a therm for a period of 6 months. There you go.
the whole they've not applied a windfall tax to the oil and gas companies at all. It's all
No,
been a complete con.
it has
They've
been a con.
applied it to wind farms,
Yes.
basically.
That's the maddest thing, isn't it? Because am I right in thinking that the price that we pay
Yeah.
as consumers is set by the most expensive
Yes.
commodity? So that's gas at the moment.
Yeah.
And that means that renewable energy has gone up in price. So those renewable energy companies are making a lot more profit than they used to. But then instead
Yeah.
of being able to invest that profit into more green energy, they're getting hit by the windfall tax more than the
Yeah.
polluting companies.
Yeah, and this is what aggravates me whenever they say, "Oh, these renewable energy policies are going to cost you. They're going to put up your energy bills." It's like, no, if we got rid of the gas, your energy bills would come. Okay, we can't actually get all our energy from solar and wind at the moment,
At the moment,
but none that we could have got the vast majority of it.
yeah,
It's actually fossil fuels. It's fossil fuels that put up the price, and people know that because when you say to why have our energy bills doubled? Oh, because the war in Ukraine. How did that double them? Oh, well, we couldn't get as much oil and gas from Russia.
yeah,
You said we didn't get much anyway, and also oil and gas, they're fossil fuels. So
yeah,
you're saying that our energy prices doubled
because of fossil
because
fuels.
of Russian fossil
Yeah,
fuels.
yeah,
So, the renewable energy hasn't gone up a penny. In fact, people discovered then what a con the British energy is.
yeah,
Because there were people when it suddenly went up saying, hang on a minute, my energy provider says they get 100% of their energy from renewable sources, which is crap, by the way, because it all goes on the national grid. But that's what they were saying. So energy companies have been promoting themselves as only providing energy from renewable source. And these people saying, well, how come my bill's going up then?
yeah,
And it's because, well, no, it isn't, because they might invest in renewable sources, but it all goes onto the national grid. It's all, there isn't a separate grid for renewable and non-renewable sources.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yorosh in the chat here. They really missed the occasion to reform the house, fix number of seats. To enter, you have to duel someone. Pistols at dawn would really solve a lot of problems. Can't
no, but the
argue with
problem
that.
is we just end up with a house full of violent lords.
But also in the news this morning was, just to move on to something else, was that mortgage turbulence has continued as HSBC has pulled mortgage deals.
Yes.
And also house prices, this is according to Moody's, are set to fall 10%. Now,
Well,
the
here's the
Tories have
interesting
really
thing.
done a number on house owners here. And
They're absolutely screwed themselves over because again, the news sort of this week that was emerging. So during the pandemic, obviously, the housing market fell through the floor like everything else. So what the government did to try and reinvigorate it was that they offered like a stamp duty holiday effectively. And as you would imagine, when that was coming to an end, there was suddenly a glut of people buying houses. If they were going to be affected by stamp duty, it would be worthwhile getting it sooner rather than later.
this was on the first
And
house, wasn't it? If you already had a house, you couldn't
yeah,
get
yeah,
stamp
yeah.
duty on the second
Yes,
house.
this is first-time buyers.
Yeah.
So those first-time buyers, so they will have done what everyone does when they get a mortgage and been on a fixed rate. Well, that fixed rate is about to end now. And if they are, so for a start, there's a lot of lenders have removed the fixed rate options from a lot of their products because they don't know what's going on. And even if you can get a fixed rate, it's going to be a lot more expensive because the mortgage rate back then was like 2 point something percent. Now it's like over 5%. So they're going to be facing, even if they want to fix their mortgage, whether they want to fix it or not, they're going to be, there's going to be a whole load of people suddenly, and these are first time buyers. So depending on, what sort of job they're in, their income has been falling below the level of inflation as it is, suddenly going to find their mortgage bills going up a lot all at once.
Yeah.
And, you look at the Tories and you think to yourself, okay, so first of all, you've created this time bomb for mortgage holders, your traditional voters. And now you've got the Chancellor saying that he not only supports this move by the Bank of England to whack up your mortgage payments, but he's quite happy if that causes a recession as well.
Yeah.
It's just madness.
Yeah. And they're the ones that are saying that they should be trusted on the economy. I mean, like, how much trust do you give these people before you think, hang on, they don't know what they're doing? They're making a bad situation worse, a bad situation that they created.
Yes.
And when they're pulled off on it, they go, oh, yeah, but Labour left us in a worse. No, we weren't. In 2010, we were not in a worse situation than we are in now.
No,
this is the worst it's been in my lifetime. This is off the charts. And it is affecting so many people, renters and mortgage holders, anyone who likes buying food, and affecting the poorest people the most, because if you're already buying Tesco value meals, then there's nowhere else to go.
No, Not really. Well, Aldi, but that's it.
Well, yeah.
If you're already at Aldi,
If you're
that's it. You
already
are.
buying from Aldi and Lidl, there's
Yeah.
nowhere else to go to get cheap
No.
food. You can't get food any cheaper than it is in the cheapest places.
Yeah.
Phil wants to know, why would house prices fall?
Because the mortgages are much more expensive. So you can only, so for example, you can only get a mortgage. Yeah, you can only get a mortgage that you can afford, that you can afford the repayments on. So a mortgage lender says, well, looking at your income and your expense, stuff like that, you can afford this size mortgage, which is because the interest rate's higher, is going to be a smaller mortgage. So you can now only, whereas in the past, maybe you'd have been able to offer, you know, £150,000. I'm obviously using house prices really near where I am. It's a lot cheaper than lots of places. £150,000. Maybe it's now only £120,000.
Yeah.
So you can't offer the person you're trying to buy the home off as much. And it's not just you. It's like loads of people around the country, because the mortgage they can command is much lower now. So inevitably, what has to happen, and if someone needs to sell their house and move somewhere, they may have to accept a lower price. So the prices are coming down, because some people need to move for their work or whatever it is.
Oh,
They
yeah.
need to move. Some people will be forced to move because they won't be able to afford their mortgage repayments, and they don't fancy just foreclosing on it. So they may have to downgrade and get a cheaper house. And again, they may just have to settle for whatever they can get for their house,
So
because if they can't afford their mortgage, they have to sell it quickly.
yeah. So if
So
you had, for instance, bought a house 10 years ago that was worth, say, £400,000, and you've paid off in the last 10 years, you've paid off, let's say, half of that on your
you won't have
mortgage.
paid off half, but go on.
Okay, but okay, let's say
Because you're paying off
100,000.
more interest to begin with, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it,
Okay.
like, you pay off hardly anything in the first 10 years.
Right. Okay. Well, let's say they've paid off
Hardly anything.
100,000. So they've paid all this money,
Yeah.
and then they miss a payment because they can't buy a new house. They can't sell the house they're in. They miss a payment. Does the bank just come and say, right, we'll have that?
No. So there's, first of all, you may have mortgage protection in place. I don't know under what conditions it would work if your income is basically fine and you just can't afford the repayments, I guess. But you will, it takes time. They have to give you time. Initially, what you would probably do, you know, if it's purely that your mortgage payments have gone up, you would have some sort of deal where you now just pay off the interest.
Yeah.
You do an interest only payment. You can as well, with most mortgages, give yourself a payment holiday anyway. So after, you know, with each so many years, you can sort of say, can I take my payment holiday now, like for a
And
month or two?
just pay the interest or something.
Yeah, or not even pay that. I think you can actually have every now and then. I'm not an expert. I don't have a mortgage, but I think every now and then you can have a mortgage payment where you just for a month don't pay anything because you come into a bit of financial difficulty.
Yeah.
So you just don't make the payment that month. But yeah, you would certainly go to the bank and say, look, you know, I can afford to downgrade my payments. It'll mean taking longer,
Yeah.
and they may, you know, rejig things that way. So, I mean, after the culling of Black Wednesday, I know Labour introduced rules to make sure that you can't just lose your house like that. But there does come a point at which, if you cannot afford, you know, obviously you can't just live there for free.
Yeah.
It's not your house until you've paid it off. And as I say, you will end up with a situation where people will look at it and think, right, well, these are the repayments now. We
Yeah.
can't afford it, and they will just choose to get a smaller place or a cheaper place.
Well, William Hawkins is put in the chat, if houses are repossessed, the lender will take as low as 60% of the market value.
Oh yeah. They just auction them off.
We've got
Especially if you've been paying for quite a while, they've probably got their money back anyway, or they've got a lot of their money back. They don't need to like squeeze the market. They're not going to piss about with estate agents. They just auction it.
Yeah. William also says mortgage rules got a massive shake up under Gordon Brown with the revised
Yes.
affordability rules, which is good. Another good thing Labour did when they were last in power. And a new life in, I think this is Thethia, maybe, Turkey. I'm a mortgage advisor and it's a bloody nightmare at the moment. Yeah, it's just, David Dack saying it's a way of cleansing out of London. And John Clements is saying the banks do not like taking property as it drives down the value of the security on the rest. They will try to keep you paying something.
Yeah.
And Nick and Diff says, my mate called me yesterday. She's on about $45,000 pounds, a year, and has a 40,000 deposit, looking at a £200,000 house. She's single and doesn't think she can afford it with bills on top. That's mad, isn't it? That's
No. Well,
45,000. I mean, the average wage in the UK is what, 27,000.
Might be a bit more now, but but I mean, the thing is as well, like some people be thinking, why are people moaning about the interest rate? Because the base rate at the moment is what, 5.5%? No, is it? Can't remember, something about that. And they're thinking, well, but there was a time before the banking crisis when interest rates were up and higher than that. And what's the deal? And the deal is that two things, apart from the fact that incomes have been suppressed in that time, it's the percentage interest rate is a percentage. So a particular, like 5% on a larger debt is a lot more extra money that you have to find.
Yeah.
So if house prices as a proportion of income have increased, they used to be about, before the banking crisis, and it was still much higher than it has been in the past. It was about something like six times the average house price, I think, was about 6 times the median income, whereas now it's about 9.
Yeah.
So you've got that, so when people say, oh, the interest rates used to be 5 or 6%, yeah, on much smaller values.
Yeah,
So
I've heard that.
much.
People have said
But
that to me.
people just don't understand
But also,
percentages.
your percentage of how much you spent on your mortgage or your rent was on average about 9% back in the day. Now it's 33%. That is just, of your salary going on.
And everything else has gone up as well.
Yeah,
Food
everything
has gone
else
up a lot
under
more.
under the bloody Tories. So there's a couple of stories I just wanted to point out that are on the Guardian front page here. One of them is about how 12 million Americans believe violence is justified to restore Trump to power, which is quite insane. And talking about insanity, you're talking about fossil fuels and the fact that the price of fossil fuels has gone through the roof. And when you talk about renewables, like, oh, it's too expensive. 19.3 billion pounds worth of fossil fuels have been imported by the UK from authoritarian states in the year since the Ukraine war started. It's nearly 20 billion pounds worth of money that has gone out of the UK to authoritarian states.
Does that include us?
No, it doesn't. Well, it wouldn't be an import, would it? It would just be moving around. No. But yeah, Visual Ghoul saying that I'm too quiet. I have tried to put my gain up a little bit, but it's a bit hard to fiddle with my mic while I'm talking. But we're gonna have to wrap it up soon, Phil. I'm afraid, because I'm about to jump on a bus, the mega bus, to London. Yay! Do you know how much it was on the train?
You did tell me 100 odd quid.
125 quid.
And that will have just been the base amount.
Yes. Yeah. If you want like an anytime return now, it's like 170 quid. And sorry, if you want a fixed return, it's 170 quid. If you wanted an anytime return, I think it was over £250.
I mean, I paid quite a lot when I went to London last year because I can't be dealing with travelling and I hardly ever go. So I actually bought myself a first class ticket. It's very nice.
God.
But that was expensive. That was expensive. But that was the first time I'd been to London also in 25 years.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, I'm very used to getting on skanky buses, but the mega bus has good internet, and it's only a tenner.
See, I can't get my head around that. A tenner to get to London sounds like a bit of a bargain.
It is. That's why I'm getting the mega bus down. It takes 6 hours, but
is it like in India where you've got to hang onto the roof? Or something?
Yeah, definitely. I've done that. I've travelled on the roof of a lorry before through Kenya, and I've travelled on the roof of a train in Ecuador. It's quite fun. Scary, but fun.
Yeah.
Especially when a tree comes your way. And I was like, duck, there's a tree. But yeah, I'm going to go off and meet Josh and the team at the stopthetories.vote.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about
Yeah.
tactical voting and how we're going to be working on that. So we're meeting up tomorrow. So
Mm.
that be the plan. So yeah. So but we are going to I'm going to try and do a Labour social tonight at 10 o'clock when I get to London at my friend's flat. I don't know if it's going to happen because if there's a traffic jam or something. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry in advance if it doesn't happen. But Nicholas says £10 to London is cheaper than driving and paying for petrol. Well, yes, Nicholas, that's the way it should be. And when I'm in charge, that's how much the train will be. And Aki's Mad says, any chance of taking some gunpowder with you to London? It's a nice idea, but sadly not.
It's illegal.
Can't be doing that. So is there anything in the news that we haven't covered that you'd want to bring up before we sign off?
I mean, there's probably going to be all sorts in there, but I think we've covered most of the main bits of it.
Yeah. Trump hopefully going down.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
See.
Fingers crossed.
I'm very cynical about these things.
Yeah.
But we will see.
Yeah. Don't get your hopes up too much, or
because all it does is martyr him if he does go in. It's still the damage he will do is massive.
Yeah.
And when he does finally choke on a burger, he will just again, the idea of what he could have achieved will live on. So the damage he will have done is absolutely immense.
Yeah. And he was the worst person to be in charge at the worst possible time. A bit like Boris Johnson, really. The worst person to be in charge of this country during a pandemic, during a climate emergency, was a guy who didn't give a toss, just wants to party every day. Like a petulant bloody teenager.
Well, it's often the case with the Conservatives. They are the worst people to be in charge of an emergency. They can only just about be all right if Labour have been in, boosted the economy, and they come in for a few years just to knacker it a little bit before Labour come back in to repair the damage. But if you let them in during tough times and you let them in for too long, then absolute disaster.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks very much, Phil. And thanks to everyone for watching. Thanks for all the chats and the super chats. And if you want to support this channel, head over to patreon.com/Labour Social, sign up, and then you get access to the Discord server where we go after the morning brew shows each morning and have a chat on there. So if you want to do that, you are very welcome to do so. I'll be back tonight, I hope, at 10 o'clock for the Labour Social. And then we'll be back next week for Morning Brew on Monday at 9:30. Is that right? Did you get that right?
It is for you, yes.
Yeah, for me, yeah. For me. Phil does Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I do Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays. So thanks very much for watching. And until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.
See you later.